We all know the story of the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus. Her face is one of the most recognizable in history. But what happened to her after the crucifixion? The Bible goes completely quiet on the subject. She just vanishes. For 2,000 years, her final days have been a matter of faith and a whole lot of speculation. History's most important woman simply fades from the record. But what if a collection of forgotten manuscripts, hidden for centuries, holds the key? What if these texts tell a story of the stunning, mysterious circumstances of her passing? Today, we're looking at these controversial documents to sort out one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. What really happened to the Mother of God? Section 1. The Silence in the Secret Texts. The last time we see Mary in the Bible is in the book of Acts, praying with the apostles. After that, nothing. Not a single word about her death or burial. And that biblical silence is where our mystery begins. How could a figure this important just disappear without a trace? For centuries, faith was the only answer. But what history and scripture hide, other writings claim to reveal. We're talking about apocryphal texts, ancient writings that weren't included in the official Bible but were popular in early Christian communities. Some were dismissed by the early church, even called heretical. But they stuck around, passed down in secret, preserving a story so detailed and profound it has shaped the beliefs of millions. The most important of these is a whole family of stories known as the Transitus Mariae, which is Latin for the passing of Mary. These aren't one single book, but a collection of related texts that started showing up in the late 4th and 5th centuries, with versions in Greek, Latin, Syriac, and Coptic. For a long time, scholars argued about whether they were worth anything, but many now see them as a vital window into the earliest traditions about Mary's final days. These documents don't just fill in the blanks, they describe a divinely planned departure, an event so miraculous, it was said to have been announced by an angel. According to the Transitus Mariae stories, Mary's end didn't come with sickness or old age, but with a message from heaven. One popular version of the tale says an angel, sometimes identified as Gabriel, appeared to Mary while she was praying. The angel gave her a palm frond from paradise and told her that in 3 days her life on earth would be over, and she would finally be with her son again. This wasn't a death sentence, it was a promise. But Mary had one request. She wanted to see all the apostles one last time. This seemed impossible. The apostles were scattered all over the known world, from Peter in Rome to Thomas in India, spreading the gospel. But the story says her prayer was answered, spectacularly. One by one, the apostles were supposedly lifted by clouds and miraculously flown back to Mary's bedside in Jerusalem. John, who was in Ephesus, was reportedly swept up in a cloud of light and dropped right at her door. The arrival of the apostles, gathered by a divine whirlwind, was the first clue that something incredible was about to happen. They weren't there to mourn, but to witness the unfolding of a heavenly plan. And this brings us to a major point of debate, because the very location of these events is still argued over. For centuries, 2 cities have laid claim to being Mary's final home. The first and much older tradition places Mary's final days in Jerusalem. Nearly all of the early apocryphal texts, including the Transitus Mariae, name Jerusalem as the place where she died, or entered her dormition, a word that literally means falling asleep. Today, the beautiful Church of the Dormition sits on Mount Zion, the traditional spot where Mary is said to have passed away. A short walk from there, in the Kidron Valley, is the tomb of Mary, an ancient rock-cut tomb believed to be her original burial place. Archaeological work has shown the site was a cemetery in the 1st century, and Christian writers from the 4th century onward, like Saint Epiphanius of Salamis, confirm the strength of the Jerusalem tradition. But there's a powerful competing claim that points to the ancient city of Ephesus, in modern-day Turkey. This idea comes from the Gospel of John. On the cross, Jesus entrusted his mother to the care of the beloved disciple, who is almost universally believed to be John himself. Since we know from historical records that John later lived in Ephesus, the logic is that he must have taken Mary with him. This tradition really took off in the 19th century after the visions of a German nun, Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, were published. Though she was bedridden and had never left Germany, She gave incredibly detailed descriptions of a small stone house near Ephesus, where she claimed Mary lived out her last years. Acting on these descriptions, a French priest in 1881 found the ruins of a small ancient building on a hill the locals called Mount Nightingale. The structure was a stunning match for Emmerich's visions. Today, this site, called Mariamna Evi, or the House of the Virgin Mary, is a massive pilgrimage destination visited by several popes. So, which is it? The ancient, text-supported Jerusalem tradition, or the compelling logic and visionary discovery at Ephesus? The historical evidence for either location is still debated, leaving it a matter of faith. But no matter where it happened, the ancient accounts are surprisingly aligned on what happened next. Section 4. The Climax, the Dormition and Assumption. With the apostles gathered, Mary prepared to depart. The scene described in the apocryphal texts isn't sad, but peaceful and reverent. As she lay on her bed, surrounded by the founders of the church, she fell asleep in the Lord. At that moment, the texts claim that Jesus Christ himself appeared in a flash of light with an army of angels to receive his mother's soul. In many paintings of the Dormition, you'll see Christ holding a small, infant-like figure, a symbol of Mary's pure soul being carried to heaven. The apostles then took her body in a grand procession and placed it in a new tomb in Gethsemane. They sealed the tomb and stood watch. But the most incredible part of the story was still to come. According to most versions of the tradition, the apostle Thomas, always a bit late to the party, wasn't there for her death. He arrived in Jerusalem 3 days later, heartbroken, and begged the others to open the tomb so he could say his goodbyes. The apostles agreed. They rolled away the stone, but when they looked inside, the tomb was empty. Her body was gone. This is the story's climax, the Assumption. It's the belief that Mary's body wasn't left to decay but was assumed or taken up body and soul into heaven. This wasn't a disappearance, it was a coronation. The ancient texts say that as the apostles stood there in shock, they heard angels singing and saw her rising into the clouds. One version of the Transitus Mariae even has Christ declaring, "Arise, my beloved, you who have not known corruption, suffer not the destruction of the body in the tomb." This idea, born from these ancient, non-biblical traditions, eventually became a cornerstone of faith for both the Catholic and Orthodox churches. It's the ultimate fulfillment of the angel's message. Mary's passing wasn't a death, but a direct ticket to heavenly glory, a unique privilege for the woman chosen to be the Mother of God. So, where does this leave us? We started with a gaping hole in the biblical story, the complete silence on Mary's final days. We look to the ancient apocryphal texts, the Transitus Mariae, which offer a vivid, detailed story of her passing. These texts tell of an angelic announcement, a miraculous gathering of the apostles, and a peaceful death known as the Dormition. They created a geography of faith, with holy sites in both Jerusalem and Ephesus, and they climaxed with the stunning reveal of an empty tomb and the glorious assumption of Mary into heaven. These accounts aren't scripture, they are traditions, stories born from a deep-seated need to give a fitting end to a life of such importance. To historians, they're a fascinating look into the beliefs of the early church, showing how believers honored a figure so central to their faith that she couldn't have just faded away. She had to have been called home. The evidence from these ancient manuscripts doesn't give us a final, historical answer. Instead, it gives us something arguably more powerful. A story that has shaped art, theology, and the devotion of billions for nearly 2,000 years. What do you think? Are these texts an inspired account of Mary's final days, or a beautiful legend created to honor the Mother of their Lord? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.